Paul Torbóid here with Lasair Dhearg. This is the first in a series of events that we had planned in the run-up to the commemorating the hunger strike in 2020. Was planned as a public event, but obviously given the circumstances that we're in with the coronavirus and the crisis and so on, we're holding a small internal event which will go out live on Facebook and other social media. I'm joined here by two individuals that are political activists going back many years, many decades in fact. In particular it's Pádraic MacCoitir and Fearghal Maguire, both of which spent time in jail. Were active in Republican politics around the time of the hunger strike and the run up to it and thereafter. And it's just a conversation about the history of the time, some insights, hopefully some stories, no loose talk, and hopefully plenty of tales. So maybe focus on the run up the no ice protests and the blanket protests and stuff like that as a bit of a context to the time. Maybe that would be the best way to start, and I'm sure you have plenty to tell about that period and stuff.
Yeah, well, I was on remand in July 1976 to Crumlin Road Jail, and it was there that I met Lasair Dhearg, Bobby Sands, who later went on hunger strike, as we know. So when I was sentenced in January 1977 to 3 years, I immediately joined the blanket protest, and we were in solitary confinement. It was a really hard time. The screws were giving us a hard time. Then in April of that same year, we all moved from H1 and H2 blanket men up to H5, and the beatings had stopped. Our morale had risen a lot, and we learnt a lot of history, politics, our language, songs, poetry and such like. Then in 1978 the beatings resumed, and they got far worse than they'd ever been, and so we were forced to go on what was later referred to as a no ice protest, and that literally meant no icing, which was very, very difficult from March 1978 until the second hunger strike started. So there were some men who were literally didn't ice for 4 years. I was lucky in the sense that I got released from prison, having served the 3 years in July 1979, and then we're going to talk about the lead up to the hunger strike, first hunger strike, and then obviously the second one after that.
Paul, I would remember back, it's hard to believe it's 40 years ago almost, since this hunger strike, and my memories of it at the time were of the attempt to build up a level of support for the prisoners at the time. The communities at the start of the blanket protest weren't behind us 1,000,000%. We needed more. In order to get people to come behind us, we started up groups in the areas, the likes of the Relatives Action Committee, and we've done work in the local, each of our own local areas. So the Relatives Action Committee had started trying to build up community support, rapping doors, holding wee marches, holding wee protests, and eventually people started coming around to realising that there were political prisoners who were suffering, who were going through a hard time in Gates blocks. And then the no ice protest started. People started coming out more. We realised that there was the potential there to get people out on the streets if we'd done enough work. So the small group that we had at the time went out of our way to make sure that we rapped every door, informed everyone. We started up a small newspaper in the area, got it around all the doors, and eventually the community support started building up for the prisoners. When we started hearing stories coming out and we started passing stories on around the community, people were genuinely surprised and shocked at just how much the prisoners were suffering. And we weren't surprised eventually when the talk of hunger strike started to come out of the jails. So we knew there was now going to be a desperation to save lives. So we knew at each point, especially when the first hunger strike started, we knew that we had to wrap up our activities in the area, and generally and nationally in every other way, and we started writing letters out to people in the public places and around the world, etc., trying to muster up support.
And so that would have been the run up to the first hunger strike.
That would have been the run up to the first hunger strike.
When did it become clear that? Like, I presume that there was some point where people started. Obviously, there might have been talk coming out of the jails and stuff like that there, but at some point it might have become clear, right? The game's on here. Like, there's a hunger strike coming. They're organising for it. I mean, was it clear at any point where they went, outside the jails, where people in the communities knew, like, right, there's a hunger strike on here?
I think it was public. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, just
came,
what you're saying, shortly before I got released in 1979, the camp staff at the time asked all of us who were on the blanket protest how we could escalate the protest, and it was clear that a hunger strike was inevitable. It was very hard for me to get up the door, and at that time I was quiet and shy, but it was very difficult for me to get up the door knowing that I was going to be released and say that a hunger strike was inevitable. I just said it like everyone else, and there was a lot of tension on the wings. Nobody knew when it was going to happen. Then, as you say, when I got out and I was going around meeting the families of men and women who were in jail at that time, most of whom I knew because growing up in Annandale, and I was surprised at, as you were saying, at the lack of support, but just with active Republicans and their immediate families. But as you said, Fearghal, that when it became clear there was going to be a hunger strike, numbers started to rally more. Used to have rallies at the Landon shops, the Busy Bee, all over West Belfast in particular, because Belfast, for us to go about over the Ardor and the Shore Strand, it was very difficult given the sectarian nature of the state, and the killings and all were carried by unionist gangs. Not that it was fear on our part, but people were reluctant to travel outside their own areas. So when the hunger strike was talked about, then it did start in October of 1980.
And obviously there's a larger ebb and flow in Republican politics in terms of peaks and troughs and all that type of stuff, and heightened activity, and obviously there's periods of despondency. I mean, would it be fair to say that after the 1980 hunger strike, that for the prisoners in particular, that there might have been a period of despondency? Or
yeah, I think there probably was. Yeah, I believe that the prisoners, having realised that basically they had been taken on by the Brits, for want of another way of putting it, and that the Brits were able to manipulate them into believing that possibly they had achieved enough to end the hunger strike. Of course, the Brits do what the Brits do well. They betrayed all their promises to them.
Yeah.
And there was that feeling of almost like defeat in the communities. I'm sure among the prisoners. I can't really speak for them. I wasn't in jail at the time, but I'm sure that's the way they felt. And I think at that stage, we possibly realised that. Well, I know personally, I realised that if this was going back to hunger strike, this was going back to death.
Yeah.
I don't think there was any doubt that someone was going to die. Did I believe 10 would die? No. Did I believe someone would die? Definitely.
Yeah. And that was the end of the 80 hunger strike, which was led by Brendan Hughes.
Yeah.
In the process of leading it, I understand he stood down as OC in the jail, is that right?
Yes.
And he was replaced by Bobby Sands.
Yeah, and again, I remember that night well when the hunger strike did end, and we have to remember obviously there was 3 women went on the last of the 19 days of the hunger strike. 3 women in Armagh jail, because the women in Armagh were also in protest. But my dad, who was a member of the felons, I remember him coming to the house, and when I saw him the next day, I wasn't staying in the house, but I met him the next day, and he was telling me he had a row with a couple of people in the felons. My dad was a pioneer, didn't drink, and some people were critical of the hunger strike ending and the manner in which it ended. And my dad had already been in hunger strike in the 1940s, so he knew what hunger strikes entailed. And I think it's unfair, and it should never be criticism levelled at any of the 7 lads who went on the hunger strike at the outset, because they believed that there was maybe something in the air. And as Fearghal was saying, the Brits are past masters at duplicity. But then when Bobby Sands, when I was back in prison again, talking to lads who were on the blocks, who were on the blanket protest, and some of whom were on hunger strike, Bobby Sands was able to go up to the prison hospital and visit the Dhearg and the other hunger strikers, apart from Sean McKenna, who was in Musgrave Hospital, who was on the brink of death. And in fact, a lot of people out here thought that he was going to die because of the news wasn't as readily available as we have it now, through social media and such like. But there used to be regular news flashes. But there's a lot of rumours too, and that was one of the people we would heard even before the hunger strike ended that Sean McKenna had died, and then word came in right away he hadn't died or whatever. But Bobby Sands, I remember the lads were telling me that he was able to go around each block. At this stage, it was 3 protesting blocks, and down each wing, speaking to the OC of each wing, and in some cases he broke down crying with people he was closer to, and knowing that the hunger strike, and he wasn't critical of the hunger strikers per se, but critical of the Brits obviously and the NIO. So he wanted to go on hunger strike the next day. Bobby Sands, and I won't claim they've known the man well, would have seen at Mass every Sunday, but the one thing, and talking to people who knew him far better than I would ever have known him, said that one thing he was never a reactionary. He was a very level-headed man, and but I can understand his frustration, and it was clear that another hunger strike was going to take place, and as Fearghal was saying, when another hunger strike was going to take place, it was inevitable. Yeah. Even for us out here in the streets, people, and especially the people in the jails, knew at least one person was going to die. Not that anybody had a death wish,
Well, we knew that Thatcher would definitely want a pound of flesh before she would make any move. There's no way. She backed herself into a corner. She had, or under government, of course, had backed themselves into a corner and had left themselves in a position where, in order to give anything, they had to get something. And unfortunately, we believe Bobby Sands would be the price that had to be paid.
And there's a quote, I can't remember the quote now off the top of my head, but it was attributed to Bobby before he went on the hunger strike, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was there'd be another hunger strike, I'll lead it and I'll die. Do you think there was an expectation on his part that he knew he was going to die? Like he knew, yeah?
Talking to lads who, there's been a lot has been written about Bobby, but speaking with lads in the, when I, as I say, back in the blocks, he was under no illusion. And each of the lads were under no illusion as well, because nobody went on hunger strike. It wasn't a bluff on their part. They went on hunger strike, obviously, for the 5 demands. And likes of Bobby Sands and the others saw that this was more than just a prison struggle. This is part of an overall struggle. And it's an historical struggle, as we know. Hunger strikes, starting with Thomas Ashe, who died in 1817, and hunger strikes had taken place. Up to then, there was about 12 people had died on hunger strike in different decades. So Bobby himself, and his writings, he'd written a diary for the first 19 days of his hunger strike. It was clear where he was going. And that man, like everybody, he's a human being. He didn't want to die, but he was prepared to die.
Yeah, which made his hunger strike and his eventual death more poignant. The fact that I don't think he had any doubt in his head it was going to be his death.
Yeah.
It's probably easier to go on hunger strike if you think there's a possibility you'll get movement and it'll end and things will go on. But knowing in his heart of hearts that he was probably going to die would have made that hunger strike a hell of a lot harder. Yeah. And even for the men that followed after him, as the second one died and the third one died, those on the hunger strike as you go along would have to be really seriously thinking about the fact that they're probably going to die.
Yeah.
And that sort of sacrifice was immeasurable.
Yeah, particularly those like after Bobby hit, because it was a stagist approach, wasn't it? When it was like a few weeks and then the next one went on and all that type of stuff. So post Bobby dying, there would have been ones going on the hunger strike, and I mean they would have known. I mean it wouldn't have been a case of that little bit of hope. They would have known that the outcome here is likely the possibility of death unless something was to happen. And the start of the hunger strike again, that would have been what?
March 81.
March 81, and where would you have been then?
Well, as far as political activism is concerned, I would have been doing different sort of work, but part of it was absolutely 100% trying to build up support for the prisoners. And again, as Pádraic said, we realised that this was no longer a prison struggle, but an overall struggle. That the Brits had got their head on around this thing of trying to defeat the whole struggle. So it became a big picture, and it became important that every ounce of your energy was put into whatever you were involved in.
Yeah. And is there a particular point, day, hour, like whatever, a particular point that you knew that the second hunger strike was on? I mean, was there a moment you remember either on the news or feeding through in the community or?
Yeah, well I was I was running about in Lanardoon and Andytown, and I was on the run, and I couldn't stay in my own house. And the meetings that I had gone to, because not just because I had been on the blanket protest, some of the people I went in the meetings with would have deferred to me, asked me what I thought of things and all this, and I wasn't privy to anything by any shape or form. But it was clear that a hunger strike was coming, and it was a significant time, given the 1st of March. It was 5 years since political status had been taken off in 1976. So when the hunger strike started, it was like any form of protest. There was a lot of publicity around it at the outset, and then as the days were going in, maybe it happened relatively quickly, but there were some days where you just ran about. There was a sort of normality in the area. Posters were being put in a lot of people's windows. People weren't forced to put them, but it was brilliant for us as political activists to see walking past houses in Lanardoon and Andytown, and you saw people's posters up, and you went, good to see that. And we were taking advantage this year. We were going up, and if you saw a poster, not in every window, you would have knocked the door and you would have asked people, can I get the arm? And people knew what we were getting at. And then as for me, one of the more positive aspects was after when when Frank McGuire died, and there was a big hullabaloo by the SDLP, who wanted to put that Austin Curry face up for the by-election. Bernard McAliskey was spoken about as being a stand for the prisoners, but sense prevailed, and it was agreed that Bobby Sands himself would go forward as a candidate in the by-election. And then when he was elected, it was one of the best, no, not the best days of my life, far from it, but it was morale had risen immeasurably, and a lot of us going to meetings, meeting people in the street, thinking this could be the end of it. But that only lasted a day, if a full 24 hours. It was clear when Thatcher came out with her infamous statement, and then talking to people who were there during the time, they were as jubilant as everybody out here, probably more so given that they were in jail. But within a day or two, they realised that's Thatcher is prepared to let Bobby die. Mm-hmm.
And how close was Bobby to death? I mean, how long after his election was?
I can't remember. I think it was probably
April. He was still. I think it was the 19th of April, if my memories. But he was relatively healthy at this stage.
Yeah. So it was a period of weeks then until he died. It wasn't.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it was weeks before it. But he was in relatively good health, and reading the likes of Owen Caron and other people coming up to visit him, and especially his family and all, and they were saying he was, but he himself was under no illusion and was saying to his family and immediate close friends and comrades, don't be thinking this is going to be a game changer. They might that wouldn't even be in vogue at the time, but
yeah.
And certainly, like, just talking about that ebb and flow in Republican politics and morale and the peaks and the troughs, and obviously it was a turbulent time, but in morale terms, like, it was turbulent as well, because if you think, I mean, coming after the end of the 80 hunger strikes and where people might have felt emotionally leading into this one, and then Bobby getting elected, and then there was other people starting as TDs and stuff like this, but then for Bobby to die, I mean, where did that bring things emotionally for people, or for morale, or what effect did that have? Like,
I think for maybe a week or two running up to Bobby's death, I've been keeping the radio on overnight, and I remember waking up, I think it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, I can't really remember exactly, but I'm hearing this thing in the background, after 66 days, and it's always stuck in my head, and I remember jumping up out of the bed and thinking, has he died? having said that, we all knew it was very, very close, but still in all, it was kind of a shock. But I remember grabbing my clothes to get up out of the bed and sitting down for a couple of seconds, and a wave of emotions came over me, which I think summarised the whole run-up to it, to his death. And the amount of emotions that came out all at once was unbelievable. There was anger, there was exhaustion, there was disappointment, there was pride, there was foreboding. A load of different emotions all at once. But I remember when I did get dressed, and I ran down the stairs and got to the front door, and I was heading out the door, and I thought to myself, where do I go? Like, what's the next reaction? Because I think you'll probably concur with this, but at the time there was this thing of which sort of disappointed me as a 19-year-old. Hold off, hold back, keep calm, stay calm, encourage people to come out onto the streets, do nothing, don't react. And I remember at the time thinking, that's wrong, get out here and get at them, and do whatever you have to do. Like. So all those emotions had built up and had come to the surface at that point. And it was only sort of in the hours after that you just started thinking about the human terms of Bobby Sands, his family. And only in probably the years afterwards, I started to realise that on that day that reaction was probably the right reaction. But as a 19-year-old you were thinking differently at the time. But in the times afterwards you're thinking, there's no point in us sending people out to be killed. Because that's what the Brits want, that's what they planned for. So we shouldn't. That was my sort of.
But I was staying on the billet close to the bottom of Lanadune, and the people whose house I was staying in, I'd say to them, if you hear anything, because not only me, a lot of people she was saying, a lot of us were knackered, you were running about, and I said, if you hear anything, get me up right away. So I was lying fast asleep in the settee, and the people of the house came down and woke me up. And it was the weather. It was May. It was nice weather. The windows were open, and I woke up and I heard the bin lids going. So I jumped up, and we had a rendezvous point in another part of Lanadune, and we were briefed of what to do when you're bumping into people. And I remember running up Lanadune Avenue and meeting people who were out banging bin lids, and a lot of us. Some of us would have been well known in the area, and people would have stopped and, what are you doing, what's happening, and all that sort of thing. And we were told, as Fearghal was saying, to ask people to stay calm. When we went into the house we were to meet, the whole room was silent. There was nobody crying or anger was. We were so angry, it was unbelievable. If we were asked to go out and do something there and then, it wouldn't have been a question asked. We were just ready to go out. We were champing at the bit, and I'm sure it was the same for other people throughout the country. And I know for a fact it was the same, because I spoke to people afterwards, and people in Derry and Tyrone and South Armagh, wherever that might be, places where the IRA is very, very strong, and just got out and do something. And it was a lot easier for us in some way. That we were able to vent our frustration and our anger in some way, and some things happened later on that day and all, and that night. But in jail, people who were sitting in a cell, and they heard it on the smuggled in radios, and they sent word up and down the wing, even though they were expecting Bobby to die, and especially the lads who knew him personally, and a lot of people did know him personally. It was so emotional, and you could do nothing. You're stuck in your cell. At least for us outside, we could run about. You could walk about the streets, and you talk to numerous people, and you were able to just get a lot of it off your chest. And a lot of people were very, very emotional, and it wasn't just women who were crying. It was this sort of thing. I was only women. There was men who were crying. At that stage, I was a young man myself, and I wasn't being embarrassed at seeing people crying, but it was. Anger that was out here, and then in the days leading up to Bobby's funeral, Francis Hughes was on hunger strike, Raymond McCrease and Patsy O'Hara were on hunger strike at this stage, and you just went, what's going to happen? Francis Hughes, is he going to be next to die? Is Patsy O'Hara and Raymond McCrease going to be? I can't remember exact feelings that I had, but probably the same as yourself, Fearghal.
And again, I mean, that probably would have dragged the emotions down a fair bit, and then the numbers at Bobby's funeral would have been maybe a significant, significantly apply a level of support for the hunger strike and the prisoners issue and all that type of stuff. How did the hunger strike come to an end, basically?
Well, for us, I'm not being parochial here, but Joe McDonald was a local man here from Lenadoon, and I knew him personally, and his funeral was the biggest funeral that was ever seen, and it's still to this day the biggest funeral ever seen come out of Lenadoon. And when his funeral was attacked by the RUC and the British Army, the firing party, after the firing party fired a volley of shots, the RUC and the British Army fired live rounds. A number of people were shot and seriously wounded. People were shot with plastic bullets. So that all this anger and frustration, and shortly afterwards I ended up back in Crumlin Road jail, just after Martin Hurston died. And when I went in the Crumlin Road jail, it was completely different from what had been the 5 years prior to that. I was a lot more experienced, and the screws weren't harassing people as prisoners as they had been the first time I went in. And at that stage, it's sad to see that it was the more the hunger strike, the longer the hunger strike went on, and families felt obliged, or maybe it depends. I would never criticise them. Some of their sons were taken off hunger strike, and it was going, where is this going to lead to? Were the Brits going to let 20 people die, 30 people die? And there would have been that number of men who were prepared to go on hunger strike.
Yeah.
And that's probably very, very frustrating part for a lot of people. And obviously the emotions that were there for the men who were and there was no women on hunger strike, the second hunger strike, the men in the blocks, for them seeing their comrades die one by one, and it fairly came after Joe McDonald died. It was fairly constant, July, August, and then the hunger strike ended with the day. The last hunger strike of the day was Mickey Devine on the 20th of August of 1981.
And that, the hunger strike, whenever I look back in Irish history, there's the notable moments that stand out to me immediately is the end of the conflict of the war in 1988. You had the hunger strike in 81, start of the war, late 60s, early 70s, and then 1916. That's the things that always immediately come to my mind, all of which had significant impact. But what would you say in terms of the struggle for that generation, or for the struggle in general, what would you say, like the hunger strike, what kind of an impact do you think it had, for good or for bad?
It's definitely up there in 1916, and the executions in 1916, it was a defining moment. And there are thousands of people out there whose politics is based on the hunger strike. They maybe were young people during it, and afterwards became political activists, and some of the best political activists we've had came out of the hunger strike and what they seen then and what they learned then. And it must have been the same sort of feeling that people had after 1916, and the way people's sort of view on Republican politics kind of came to the fore and became more relevant. And
yeah.
I think, same as 1916 or the years following 1916, I think the hunger strike did the same for this period.
Yeah, and I agree with that it was one of those pivotal moments, and living through it, you knew it was an historical time, but in hindsight and talking about it here today, almost 40 years later, and looking back on it, it's my memories of it are very, very, a lot of it are very, very clear. And whenever we look at struggle and we look at periods in Irish, like 1916, 1798, 1981 is going to go down. When we're long gone, it's one of those defining moments in Irish history, and we had that opportunity. And I'm firmly of the belief, not only the hunger strikers dying, but how that impacted on an Irish society, Irish politics, Republican politics, when so many people then, it reawakened people to struggle, to imperialism, and that was the opportunity that and I believe in later years, as you were saying in 1988, in 1987 when the IRA surrendered, then the final surrender was in 2005. That was an opportunity lost, and I can't speak for hunger strikers or their families, and I would never ever try to claim to speak for them. But I think that given the sacrifice of hunger strikers, other people, men and women who were killed, who were injured, who ran about, and they believed that this struggle, and this isn't a mad belief, this isn't like a blood sacrifice that some revisionists talk about in 1816. 1916, when they went out on the 24th of April, the men and women, they believed strongly that this was going to bring about a massive change. And I think the hunger strikers, and Bobby Sands' writings, and unfortunately there's very few writings by other of the lads, apart from no doubt personal letters to their families and close friends, they were under no illusion too. They were political activists, and they realised this is more than just a prison struggle. And for us sitting here today in 2020, and we look at the state of the whole 32 counties, and opportunities have been lost. But I'm not getting despondent over this here, and I don't waking up every morning thinking of the hunger strikers, talking about it now. You certainly, or you're reading books, or you're watching documentaries, or people you meet at commemorations. You talk about those times, and you're saying, what happened? How did we let this go? We didn't let it go. I personally didn't let it go. I can't speak for every single person in every Republican, but there's others who claim the mantle of certain of the hunger strikers, and they have let people down big time.
I feel the same myself, Pádraic. And one of the things that I hold is at that moment of Bobby Sands' death, when I felt that batch of emotion that I'd never felt before. Unfortunately, I only ever felt that whole batch of emotion. I've been through lots of things in my life to have emotions over, but that whole batch of emotions came back to me once since, and it was the day that a top Republican person stood with his glass in his hand, his tuxedo on, saluting the Queen of England and wishing her good health as the military band, the British military band played God Save Our Noble Queen, and all the emotions came back that moment. And I seen Bobby Sands' face, I seen the hunger striker's face, and some of the emotions changed to waste and a real feeling of where did this all go wrong. The end of the hunger strike should have been the beginning of the end of British rule in Ireland, and we missed the boat.
I suppose all that sort of ties in with the points that were made there about the ebb and flow of republicanism, the peaks, the troughs, the morale, the lack of morale and stuff like that there. I suppose the good thing now is that, I mean, the context now might be somewhat different, but is it really, when you look at the economic processes and what's going on in society in terms of housing and poverty and occupation and all that stuff? And the good thing is that when you look at the struggle now, you know, there are lots of people out there that aren't happy with the status quo, and they're fighting to change it in their own way, and who knows where we'll be in 5 or 10 years, you know?
Yeah, and it's right that we remember our history, but it shouldn't bring us down. We shouldn't let history dictate what we are looking for in the future. We have to learn from history, of course we do, and the sacrifice of the hunger strikers and others should never be forgotten. But if we as political activists are saying that change needs to come about, we just can't sit and read books, can't listen to documentaries, and that's it, and then go about our daily lives, hard and all that is for a lot of people. I would encourage as many people as possible, whether you were born before or since the hunger strike, if you're still able and you're willing, don't just sit and do nothing about it, the situation we find ourselves in today, because as sure as we're sitting here, that once this coronavirus crisis ends, there's going to be a massive recession. People are going to lose there's going to be a lot of evictions. There's going to be more people unemployed. Poverty is rife at the minute, and it's going to get a lot worse. And it's not just good enough to people for whinge and cry about it. Get out and do something. And if it means that you're saying, I'm doing this because of when I've read or I remember what the Hungerstrikers went through, and every other man and woman who died in this struggle for a socialist republic, there's times in which you can get out and do something, and now is the time to do it.
Absolutely. Well, listen, just wanted to say a massive thank you to both of you. It's good to have those insights, sort of gather the context of the time and stuff. But do you have Lasair Dhearg are planning another number of these events with different political activists focusing on women in the jails and stuff during that time, before and after, and different talks that will be organised within this context so long as the coronavirus crisis goes on. So tune in, follow the Facebook page, facebook.com/Lasair Dhearg. The websites are as well, lasairdearg.com, and give it a like and a share. Thank you.